Power. They say power is the ability to get things done. And politics is the ability or the power to decide what do you need to get done. What good is a power hour if we can't talk politics and not have a politician in the room? My guest today checks all those requirements. If you go back to the previous power hours that we've held, you'll notice that many of our speakers, many of our advisory champions on the Cyber Exchange Committee never necessarily had a background in cybersecurity. It's not something that happened to them that they ended up in cybersecurity, but was a thoughtful engagement and a journey that got them to the positions that they're in today. And that's the beauty of cyber. You see multiple disciplines, multiple interests, all coalescing into this force that's looking to keep our digital environment safe and secure and ensuring that we can have fun at the same time while engaging online. My name is Ali Hirji. This is the third week of the Power Hour. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're joining us. As all of you know, www.cyberexchange.ca is your global cybersecurity community. We have a series of events and talks that are leading up to our big event next week, August 10th to August 14th, where we'll be talking about a variety of issues, and you can earn up to 30 CPE credits. Take a moment right now to make sure that you've created your profile on www.cyberexchange.ca. My guest today has been a friend to not just myself, but my students at Durham College for nearly 2 years. We met, I believe it was April 2019, when I delivered a talk on the relationship between AI and the Indian Dabbawala system. Many of you may have read about the Dabbawala systems or maybe even heard talks about the Dabbawala system on TEDx. And I related the two in terms of supply chain and the data required for AI to get folks who were for the first time engaging in AI to understand what that means. From there, my guest today had more conversations with me and things crystallized into her involvement in the world of cybersecurity. She's a politician, and many of you have probably made or heard a lot of interesting remarks about politics and politicians. Allow me, if you will, to put forward a little bit of a quote. Many of you know my background is from Southeast Asia, and the poet or the philosopher of the East, also known as Muhammad Iqbal, or known to the Pakistani community as Allama Iqbal, said something very, very interesting about politics. He says that nations and communities are built in the hearts and minds of poets, and they die in the hands of politicians. What he meant by that was the idea that often you find politicians not willing to go into those uncomfortable areas, not willing to play within the unknowns. But my guest today is completely different from that. Zero background in cybersecurity to begin with, and in a year and a half, she's become a champion for women in cybersecurity, for safety online, and has spoken at least 2 forums on the role of governance, policy, and procedures around bringing down tech-facilitated violence against women. She's someone who repeatedly says that there are no mistakes, just new paths for us to explore. And today on the Power Hour, I'll be exploring these paths with Councillor Marilyn Crawford. Marilyn, welcome to the show.
Hi, everybody.
Marilyn, Councillor of the Town of Ajax. Our engagements began approximately a year and a half ago. Can you tell us a little bit about your involvement in the community and some of the work that you were doing at the Durham District School Board, I believe, in the lead up to becoming a councillor? Marilyn?
Yeah, my career in politics started about, I'm going to say close to 20 years ago now. I was just a stay-at-home mom, and I somehow thought I could become a politician as a trustee. So I put my name in, I won the election, and 10 years later, I became the chair of the board. I maneuvered our board through one of our QP strikes. It was very interesting. I mean, I was so naive. I went in thinking I was going to go in and change special education. I was going to go in, I was going to be the person that fixed it all. I was like elected maybe 10 minutes and thought, okay, well, that isn't going to happen. I have to figure something else out, like what I'm doing here. But you know, it was interesting, the steps and the way the journey kind of progressed. I became more of an advocate for parents trying to get themselves through the system with their special education, special ed kids. And it was empowering, to be honest with you, to be able to help people understand this gigantic education system that they got their children in. When my children graduated out of high school, I thought, okay, well, you got to strike while the iron is hot. You got to strike while your name is still out there. And so I thought, well, I'll throw my name into the hat for local council. And I won. I was a local councillor for the Town of Ajax for 8 years. And through a series of events after the 8 years, there was an opportunity to become a regional councillor. And so that's what happened 2 years ago. I put my name in for a regional councillor, and here we are sitting together talking about cybersecurity. Another thing, 20 years ago, I would never have ever thought that I would be doing. So that's kind of my little journey.
I think it's so important for folks to pay attention to the fact that in those 20 years, your connections to the community and truly as a politician living almost at the pulse of the community. Can you tell us a little bit about how the conversations you had with other parents, with teachers, etc., kind of brought you to think a little bit about cybersecurity in the way that you think about it today?
Well, as you well know, education has changed astronomically over the last 20 years. When I was a trustee, our curriculum didn't even involve electronics. I mean, we didn't even allow cell phones. I mean, we had flip phones back then, for heaven's sakes. I mean, there's no ability to Google anything or
Yeah.
even think in terms of security. You know, fast forward even 10 years from there, we open up J. Clark Richardson here in
Yep.
Ajax, and it became the tech school. So they had laptop classes. That was unbelievably groundbreaking back then, to have a class where they did all their work on laptops. And so they became this kind of, you know, we had Pickering High School as being the athletic school and J. Clark as being the tech school. And so through my kind of involvement, I'll never forget the first AI series that we were introduced to with you. I thought, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. I literally had no idea. But I kept going
Sounds
through.
like what my students say all the time.
We had 8 AI series or AI series through Ajax over the last year. I think I attended almost all of them.
Yep.
And I remember when we were going through our journey talking about the whole Cyber Olympics and the possibility of it coming to Ajax. And I remember you introducing us to EC Council, and we were sitting there having lunch one day, and I said, it seems like this is a real male dominated industry. I mean, nothing negative about that. It was just, you know, an observation. And I remember thinking just how kind of the casual comment it was. And holy cow, you guys hooked into that. And all of a sudden we're talking women in cybersecurity. We're talking about getting things going. And it was like, wow, like that was crazy. It was just like kind of an observation. Am I all over the map here? Am I making
No,
any
they're
sense
good.
at all?
It
But I
makes a
just
lot of
thought
sense. Yeah.
it's super. What I didn't realize when we started this journey was the opportunity for students and especially in the older ages to be able to take a course and to be take a few educated courses and literally have a career, because there were hundreds of thousands of opportunities for students to have really well-paying jobs. The opportunity is there. We just had to present that opportunity to them to be able to even, I don't even know if even students even recognize that that's where it is. So anyway, I just thought it was just an interesting journey from that very first moment that we met and thinking, I don't really know what he's talking about, to thinking about women in security, then moving forward into students and trying to get them educated into this field,
You
making
know,
them
they
aware.
say, yeah, they say that, you should pursue and build your own dreams. Otherwise, somebody's going to hire you to build theirs. And I
Yeah.
think some of the things that you really focus in on, and I go back to that conversation when we were sitting with EC Council at the hotel in Ajax. This was a day before the Enable AI Summit, And we're talking about what can cybersecurity bring to a community, and what does it mean to someone in your shoes wearing a politician's hat, but wearing numerous other hats. I clearly remember that conversation where I said, it's one person, with five different hats, the whole world in her fist, and she's got a lot of things to think about. And we started talking about the role of cybersecurity in creating jobs, the role of cybersecurity in keeping communities safe, the role of cybersecurity in building awareness around gender and ethnic and race-based disparity, the role of cybersecurity in education, and lastly, the role of cybersecurity in building identity. And we started talking about engagements online. Let's unpack that conversation from, if I remember the date, it would have probably been June something 2019 when we had this conversation, 2 months before CISO Forum. And let's begin to start unpacking this a little bit so that we can understand that from your purview, why is cybersecurity so important? Let's start off with your role in ensuring that education and training opportunities were coming to Ajax in cybersecurity. Why was this so important for you?
Well, I think especially through the CISO forum, we learned a lot about kind of the weakness in all of our systems, and how important it was. Like municipalities, we tend to focus on the day to day, and we kind of forget about, or I'm sure there's a certain group of people in the municipality that think around tech and security and all those things, but in our brains we don't go there. We think about, okay, why isn't the garbage emptied? Why isn't the grass cut? Why isn't this? Why isn't that? Why isn't this? So I go to the CISO forum and my mind starts to get more opened up about securities and risks that I had never even thought about, and at the importance of about training staff on identifying those risks within our systems and our weaknesses. And then you think about it even further, how much, like I have a granddaughter who's 9, and quite possibly, well, it's more than obvious, is smarter than I am on a laptop and an iPad. And I think how easy it is for her to slip into areas where she shouldn't be, and knowing how to protect that mind while letting her still explore, and how important that is for parents to understand that. Again, another session that I think we did was seniors and AI. And again, I guess I'm considered a senior now, but knowing that some of the things that we talked about around when you're on Facebook. And remember, there was that thing about how you take a picture 10 years ago and what you look like now, and how that creates that all that information, and opens up stuff that you don't even realize that it's happening to you, right? Until you think, well, how did that happen? Or you simply say a word, and how did that show up on my feed? And it seemed probably in your world simplistic, but I could see people around tables were having these aha moments, going, oh, that's how that happened. I had no idea that's how that was going on. And simply muting the mic on your phone, because you know what I mean? Like, there were just things that were so practical in that, especially I think in that one seniors AI, that I thought it was wonderful to be a part of.
And I think, what, you've pointed to something so crucial here, is that, and perhaps, many folks may not agree with me on this, but if you haven't read this book, it's by an author, but he's an Australian author, lives in India now. His name is Gregory David Roberts, and he's written a book called Shantaram, where he talks about his experience. It's a true experience of running away as a fugitive from Australia and coming to India, and then working in the slums as a doctor, and eventually getting sort of sucked into the underworld. And there are lots of interesting anecdotes there. But he says something that I think speaks very closely to you, and that's the open-mindedness. I say this a lot in many academic circles, that the truth is kind of like a bully that we all pretend to like, right? And when Gregory talks about this, he talks about this fact that you have to confront these things, the truth about what's going on, even though if it's not something you want to hear. And the reality is, of what you just spoke about, is we don't pay attention to a lot of our blind spots, and that we need to be made aware of this from different perspectives. If you recall, one of the conversations we had at the CISO forum, we were actually talking about remote working. And we were talking about this idea of, and we'll come to it, about the Ajax Innovation Village, and how, whether it's remote working or working in sort of clustered environments where you have multiple companies in the same space, how dangerous is it, or what are the risks when somebody takes a selfie? And all of a sudden, one of the CIOs was talking about the fact that you've taken that selfie. There's a person behind you, and you're all, doing one of those and taking a nice little picture. Oops, you had a screen open which has a listing on it and has somebody's SIN number on it, and boom, it's been caught. And I think from there we realized is that if we're going to push for a particular work ethic in Ajax and we're going to attract companies to the innovation village, we need to not just talk about why we need companies here, but we need to walk this very important talk that we're doing around cybersecurity. In your opinion, okay, how important has this conversation of cybersecurity been to the kind of conversations you're now seeing around business opportunities and the innovation village in Ajax?
I mean, well, even if just before we get to that, if you look at the world where we were at the CISO forum last
Yep.
year, and you look at the world that we're in right now, where you've got like probably hundreds of people working from home, like
Yep.
probably thousands of people working from home. How important that very statement that you were saying was about even where you situate your computer in your home. Where do you know what I mean? Like, and talk about the importance of security. Now that you've got companies, if I were to pan over here, I've got on my desk, my daughter works from home. She's
Yep.
got two screens here. She's got her laptop. She's got her keyboard here. She's been working here since before March break. And I think, how that was not even thought about. That was not even anything in our brains last year.
Yep.
And suddenly, wham, we're knocked like right out of the ballpark with a pandemic. Businesses are closing. And how much more important is it about security now than it was back then? How much more important is what you're talking about, what we're talking about today, now? Because the reality is many of these businesses have figured out that they can do this a lot cheaper by having people working at home. So we need to be ready to help them secure what they've got now. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it
Yep.
just blows my mind how this whole world has changed in the course of 12 weeks. And
Absolutely.
privacy and security, it's uber important now, more than it was even 6 months ago.
It's so crucial that we start to unpack this a little bit more. And I'm going to take your wisdom and just put the innovation village conversation to a little later on. We've got about 35 to 40 minutes, so we'll come to that in about 10 to 15. There are a couple of questions that have also come in about innovation village, and we'll weave that all in. But I really want to talk about this whole thing that you've just mentioned, and that is the role and the vision that politicians have had to have amidst the pandemic. And I know Mayor Collier, your fellow councillors as well, have created numerous opportunities, have looked at different ways, have sort of followed the mantra that I've always preached, which is, don't just think outside of the box, burn the box. And in many cases you have, and it's been challenging. It's not people who have not seen such stuff before question it, but you've been open to responses. I always remind when this whole pandemic hit, and we were shutting down, our campus as well. Durham College, I hold my students very close to me. We do a lot of work together for companies. So I know that the work that we do at the hub is their source of income, is their source of reputation, and is their bridge to a future job. So any drop in performance on our side, whether it's at the AI hub or the Center for Cyber, impacts them in terms of being able to make ends meet. But I said one thing to them in a Zoom call, and I said, guys, look, I said, guys and girls, here's what you need to be thinking about. When you're constantly reinventing yourself, anywhere can be home. You have to be ready to reinvent yourself at all times. And I think that's what you're pushing forward to. So let's go back to the CISO forum. And you attended and you were there and you were in the audience and you heard Mayor Collier speak, you heard me speak. And then a month and a half later, you're on the stage welcoming all of the players to the Global Cyber Olympics. What, in your view, why was the Global Cyber Olympics so important to Ajax? And what did that for you resonate with? What did that say to you about what could be coming to Ajax?
Well, I mean, the mere fact that we were competing globally to have this particular the Cyber Olympics even come to Canada.
Yeah.
But then to have the whole thing land right here in Durham was like probably the highlight for me of my, I was deputy mayor at the time. The highlight of my deputy mayorship was to be able to be on stage with all of those like super young people, but like I wouldn't even compare my level of intelligence to where they were. Like, there was amazing that, you know, that Oshawa was involved in it, and that they were able to handle the games there. They all came to Ajax. Like who even knew Ajax existed worldwide until we had the Cyber Olympics land right in our little Audley Center, and it was just so exciting to have the whole thing happen right here in the place that I've lived for like 27 years. It was amazing.
And I think to add to that, October being Cybersecurity Awareness Month, during that time, we also held the Certified Threat Intelligence Analyst course, the first of its kind in Canada, which was again held at the Town of Ajax. It sort of was that moment of becoming, where if you're going to be, you know, a tech center, or you're going to attract tech talent, then you got to specify your niche, and started building out and carving out niche in cybersecurity. From there on end, you know, you went on this journey of attracting a lot of cybersecurity based interest in Ajax. And and I would argue, and you know, and you'll forgive me for being a little argumentative here, is I would argue that probably the seminal moment of your deputy mayorship was having IceVR open
Oh yeah,
at the Innovation Village. We
yeah.
have all from, you know, we've got students, we've got C-suite executives, we've got folks from around the world. Can you talk a little bit about what is the Innovation Village, what you call the IV of Ajax? What is the vision behind it, and why was that opening of IceVR so seminal to the movement?
Well, the Innovation Village was actually something that our current mayor Sean Collier campaigned on. He wanted an IT hub where companies would feel safe and
Yeah,
secure in building their ideas um, in a place where for lack of better terminology, they all talk the same language.
yeah,
And so that's what he campaigned on for. I didn't quite understand it until we actually started to see the vision start to come through. And then IceVR was like our first tenant, really. I mean, they came in and they said, we want to go into your old fire hall, which was like storing stuff. I don't think it wasn't being used. We couldn't sell the property. It was just there. And
yeah,
so they went in and they did their thing and they opened it up, and it was amazing. What they had done to it was incredible. It was like the first people to actually realize our vision for the Innovation Village. And I know that part of IceVR's vision was to reach into the schools and to be able to bring students in to be able to teach them about cybersecurity
yeah,
and potentially careers in this field. Unfortunately, at the same time that all happened, the teachers went on strike. And so, you know, it was just one of those bad storms.
yeah,
That's pandemic, you know, but I mean, I still think that vision is something that is able to happen in the future once we get through all of this craziness in the world. But it was a great opportunity, and again, was like the first person that came in. They were our first tenants for the for the Innovation Village. And
yeah,
then a couple months later, we had Health Connects
yeah.
come
Can
in,
I help? Yeah,
their new app system. And
yep.
so we had a big launch for that at that point. And so it's been an opportunity to attract different companies that are in the IT world, I would say.
And I think it's very crucial that we unpack this a little bit more, because you went on this really fascinating journey. And I want folks to really appreciate that not only was this journey that Marilyn and Sean Collier and all of the other counselors and the economic development folks, not only did they have to sort of come to terms with these new technicalities around cybersecurity, they wore technical hats, but they also wore business person hats. They wore legal hats. They wore social entrepreneurship hats. They wore many hats in order to make this happen. And I think, if you look at this journey, you have this, you realize that cybersecurity and IT is something where you can build municipal strength from a business standpoint. One of the many areas, Ajax excels in other spaces as well, from the performance arts being one of them, the food industry being another. But you realize very quickly that digitization and safety online is sort of a signature that you can develop for Ajax. You had a couple of companies move in. You had not just Connect Health, you had Acreage Way, you had other companies visit Ajax as well, including EC Council. We've had other major players come to town as well to see what the synergies could be. And then you hit this moment where, yes, the pandemic hits, but then you found yourself at the Canadian Women in Cybersecurity Conference, starting now to really talk about the issues for yourself. So you went on a bit of a journey and then started to build this acumen to talk about what you're seeing. Can you take us back to March the 9th at Canadian Women in Cybersecurity when you were on stage talking about tech facilitated violence against women in the BC period before Corona?
Yeah,
Why did
probably the most terrifying experience. I thought, what in the world would I be able to give to this? Like, really, what could I give to this?
it's a
So,
very
very
it's a vast
gracious with me.
it's a vast topic, but you said something in that is that you were noticing things and you were seeing things in the community. And when we were talking about you coming to that session, I said, look, Marilyn, you're not going to be able to cross the ocean by just staring at it. You're going to have to jump in, and you did. This issue around tech facilitated violence against women, why did it resonate strongly with you?
Because it's it's well, it's wrong on so
One.
many levels, but it's also using a tool. So, for instance, find your iPhone. It's a tool that if you lose your iPhone, you can find it. And yet, predators were using it to track whether it was girlfriends or wives or um, uh, anything like so a seemingly innocent tool was being used in a way that was not innocent. And also oh, forgive me for forgetting her name, but that young child that committed suicide
Amanda
was,
Todd. Yeah.
yes, I I mean, the world, it's just a mean place sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do something that you may regret for the rest of your life, and you never seem to be able to get away from it because IT has a memory, and the internet has a memory that cannot be erased. And I think when we were growing up, it was like, you make a mistake, you move to a different town, nobody knows who you are. That doesn't happen anymore. And I remember asking our police chief a couple months ago about cybersecurity and how policing, uh, how they police cybersecurity. And really, it's something that they don't have a handle on, because it's huge, and it almost demands its own training in that field of policing, because it is violent, it is violence, and it causes, there's a rippling effect, whether through mental illness, suicide is huge, and it's just it's still such uh, uh, it's such a topic that not enough of us, I think we're all concerned about it, but it's like you said at the beginning, it's uncomfortable. It's so very uncomfortable
Yeah.
that people shy away from digging into it because there's a real ugliness to it. And but we owe it to our students, to our children, to our grandchildren, to be aware of it and to be careful of what they're doing on their own internet or on their Facebook and their Instagram or anything, right? It's funny because I never forget a friend of mine saying to me, "Oh, you and your daughter always look like you get along, right?" And I said, "Well, of course we do. It's on Facebook. We're not going to post when we're yelling at each other. Of course we're always happy. Like you don't
Right.
see happiness on Facebook, right? You don't
Right.
see us fighting. You don't see us constantly arguing, right? Of course
Right.
we all like we get along. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't.
Right.
But that's it's such a fantasy world. Instagram is a fantasy world. Facebook is a fantasy world, and some of us can separate that and see it for what it is, but some of us can't. And it's depressing when you don't look as happy or you don't feel as happy as all your other friends. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. You said something right at the beginning of that, which really resonated with me. And I'm sure by now you've picked up I'm a sucker for good quotes, and I like to build sort of pyramids of thought based on some good quotes. And that statement where you said the internet has a memory
Yeah.
that can never be erased. And unfortunately, I'll add to that is that memory is both short term and long term. In the short term, it can affect you quite immediately, but in the long term, for example, in the short term, it can affect you with just a job opportunity. It can affect you with your friendship. But in the long term, it's that it can still be dug up very easily, and it's very difficult for you to manipulate some of the algorithms that are out there that bring out information about you. You hear a lot about this, politicians, for example. You hear a lot about this with people looking for new jobs, people moving into senior careers. They've done something for which they've served time or whatever have you, but the internet has a way of bringing it up minus context. And added to that, you also brought this issue around the fantasy kind of like environment of the internet, and the fact that you only see what people want to show you. My father always tells me is that character is what you are when nobody's looking. And
Mm.
you really have brought home this point is that there is always someone looking, you just don't know it. And what that person looking is looking for really is something you cannot control. Let's delve deeper into this a little bit more. You've championed quite a few initiatives for kids. You were at the Little Doctors for Kids, you were at the first cyber exchange, you joined the cyber exchange advisory. What are some of the things that you're doing to make kids in the community aware of the realities of online engagement?
So one of my favorite sessions that you allowed me to be a part of was Little Doctors, and
Yep.
it was about kids talking to kids about
COVID.
coronavirus,
Yeah.
right? And being able to bring it down to a children's level of understanding, because kids are in the house all the time, the news is on, the people are talking all the time because we're all in the same house together, and you kind of wonder like how are kids really processing what's going on. And when you introduced the Little Doctors to me, I had my granddaughter sign
Yep.
up with my daughter, and she absolutely loved it. She loved the idea that it was it was literally kids talking to kids and talking about why you can't go in the park anymore and why you have to do this and why you have to do that. And I just I really like that. And then I think we took it a little bit further. They
Yep.
came to
Cyber exchange.
they were cyber exchange, yes. And so they took it a little bit deeper into in that session too. um, and again, I think that we're foolish if we think that kids are not absorbing what is happening in our adult world. Um, and their minds are sponges. And so the earlier we can teach them about cybersecurity, the earlier we can get them to smarter become as they grow up. So that's really I think my passion around kids. You can't teach this stuff too early.
Yep.
I believe I mean, years ago we changed the curriculum in kindergarten, and now there's this higher level of thinking, And so we give more to kids because we realize, albeit, hundreds of years too late, that in kindergarten, there are these, it's not just play, it's not just
Sure.
having fun, but that we can actually teach kids at a very early age really important, like stuff that Riley would learn in kindergarten. My kids wouldn't have learned until grade 3. Okay, so there's that much more advancement, and I think there's the same thing could happen with cybersecurity at that same level. And if we teach them while they're these little sponges that just want to learn everything, whether it's in a fun format or not fun form, however it is being done, how much smarter they're going to be as they get to teenage years and adult years, and perhaps they've already started to think about, well, maybe this is something that I want to get into. We've never done that in the curriculum, never, ever done that in the curriculum. And how much that was so obvious when we didn't come back from school at March break, and now all of a sudden we're online teaching. Well, that was the most complicated thing I think my whole house went through, because the teachers didn't know how to do it. And so with teachers trying to teach online teaching, it was blowing everybody's brains, on the amount of passwords and this. You had to have a tech support in order
Right.
to get into your next subject, like you had to have your little tech support over here. So I just think that we're kidding ourselves if we think this topic is for adults. We're
Yep.
kidding ourselves if we miss the opportunity to teach our children when they're not all bogged down with a bunch of other stuff in their brain. We're kidding ourselves if we're not missing it, that we're missing that opportunity at a very young age to get in and teach kids about this.
And a comment's been made to me, and I'm just sort of going to weave it all in here for you and serve it as well as I can. And that is that you've also made sure that not only has it been about youngsters in elementary school and in secondary school, but you've also been very active and an advocate for security and cyber hygiene for seniors. And
Oh,
if you recall, when we did that session for the senior communities out in Ajax, this was, we've done 2 of them already.
yeah,
And one of
too.
the things that I had told them is that, look, what, it's not a matter of just like, oh, I want to be completely secure, because you're never completely secure. You're just limiting the amount of risk and the amount of exposure that you have to a potential breach of some sorts. And I think their minds were blown away when I said, look, what, you kind of need to know that if you have banked online, and if your banking system or your banking provider has had a breach, they're legally obliged to let you know within a certain period of time or not about that breach, so that you can take the right actions. With the seniors community, again, talk to us a little bit more about what that journey has been like, and why is it resonating so closely with you?
Well, because I am a senior.
For one, a
But
very active senior that puts many of us to shame, dare I say. I have to take 10 seconds to say this. Look, if you want to follow Marilyn Crawford on Instagram, please do. She posts a lot of great stuff. But every morning, if you're like me and you laze out of bed and go and warm up your bacon and get some coffee or whatever it is, and you see Marilyn's post, she's already walked like 100 kilometers in 5 minutes, and she'll make you feel extremely useless, where you go, wow, how did you just do that? And then you go back to eating your bacon. But if you want to have that experience, sure, follow her. Back to you, Marilyn.
well, I think that again, as I was saying, our younger population is vulnerable. Our older population is also very vulnerable, but still, they're very teachable. And I think I love that that as seniors we're exposed to laptops. My dad, honestly, my father, he died in 2017, could never send an email. He blamed it on his computer, said the computer was too old, he could never send an email. He never, ever, ever figured out the computer. So I think it is so amazing when we have seniors that are willing to, grab an iPhone, figure out search, be on Facebook and all those wonderful things that keeps them connected to
Right.
families that may not live close to them. It's so great. But we also know there's tons of scams out there, that that are just waiting to be able to get a senior that doesn't understand that this is a scam. And I think it's so important as people who we have a responsibility to educate our seniors on the CRS phone calls that everybody gets, or the CRS phone calls that everybody gets, the inbox messages that say that, you know, if you do this, this, and this, you're going to have this much money. And
Right.
all they can think about is how great that would be for my family. They don't think about what that really means, right? They don't understand all of that, because I think we inherently want to trust people. And so we have to very gently move them into a direction of, well, you know, you need to understand, X, Y, and Z. And I have to say, the first senior AI that I attended, I think you did both of them.
Yep.
I remember a gentleman getting up and he said at the end of it, he said, I want to thank you for talking slowly. I want to thank you for taking a breath. I want to thank you for speaking at a rate that we can understand. And I thought, wow, so the content of what you said was amazing,
Right.
but more importantly, the speed in which you said it was as important as the content, because I know I don't process things as fast as I used to process it. And the older you get, you did an outstanding job on not losing them. So I want to commend you on that, because I fail at that. I talk like a million miles an hour. I got so much to say because I'm afraid of forgetting it. But I just thought it was very important presentation wise, how you handled that.
You know, I say this repeatedly, which is why I hold my student community, both at Durham, at York, wherever else I've taught, close to my heart. And all of my students know this very well, that they are the nucleus of everything that I do, aside from my beautiful wife and my family, of course. But, you know, I will say this, that it's the student that makes the teacher and not the other way around. And it's feedback like that that makes all of the difference. But let's take this a little bit more and, you know, pay homage to the Canadian philosopher, Marshall McLuhan, who said that the medium is the message, right? And you know, you've really made sure that you've looked at innovative ways to bring cybersecurity discussions to the table. ICE VR, a great example. The marriage between an escape room and VR headsets, and getting a company to actually go in there and, you know, let this be on notice, you know, going and investing in that area and redoing that entire fire hall to make it into an education facility. And when
Oh,
the
don't
stars
forget
are,
Breach the Keep.
yeah,
We did
that's
too.
exactly what I was going to get to.
I was the queen.
Absolutely. So you a made sure that, you know, we can, and when the stars align, we can open up the facility again. But then you also got involved in something like Breach the Keep.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about Breach the Keep and your involvement.
That was, I had no idea what I was getting in. I had no clue. I have never done Dungeons and Dragons. I never did any of that stuff, right? So I'm like, I said to Lisa, and Andrew, I said, I have no idea what we're getting into. It was just like, okay, sit down. So I sat down. Somehow, I don't even know how I got to be queen.
I don't think Lisa and Andrew knew what they were getting into, but that's another story.
Okay. But yeah, that was so cool, because it was like acting out a whole scene, and then in the end, bringing it all around and realizing, okay, I totally missed what was happening here. Completely missed this. We thought everything was happening, like the intruders were coming through the front door and the back and the side door. In the meantime, somebody was coming in the back door when we were all concentrating on the front door, and they had come in and they had, I guess they hacked something. But it was very interesting. I so want to do it again.
Yep.
Maybe it's not fair to do it again because now I know, but I would love to have another scenario to see if I actually learned what I think I learned. You know what I mean?
Well, actually, just a little bit of a sidebar teaser here. The team at Durham College has been working closely with Maddie and Michael, and we've actually developed and are close to developing the digital version of Reach the Keep with
Ooh.
a new kind. It's the same kind of tabletop exercise, but run online, and it's full of graphics and videos and all of that fun stuff. So in the next 2 weeks, actually, Marilyn, and I'm actually going to put you as one of the potential
That
pilots to come in and pilot users to play the game online and experience it. So just imagine it as like a Zoom-like environment, and then you've got a fancy screen with all sorts of digitizations that present challenges at you, and alongside your teams, you're going to have to figure your way out. So your dream of being a gamer and a well-recognized gamer is now about to be realized, Marilyn. Marilyn, we have about 10 minutes, and I want to drive through, actually about 7 minutes, and I want to drive through a couple of the questions. So I'm going to pick up the speed a little bit
okay, sure.
on this carriage and go into camera mode here. A question that's come in, but I'll reword it just a little bit, is that the unfamiliarity, or sort of the fear of the unfamiliar, like your council members or your constituents, etc., may have seen you going, head on into the space of security, head on into the space of IT, digital healthcare, etc. How have you dealt with some of the questions and the negativity that you may face? Have you tried to educate, or have you just said, you know what, if you're not going to understand what this is, I can't help you. This is the way of the future. How do you deal with that kind of, for lack of a better word, the naysayers?
Um, I think I think really it's I try to encourage people to actually uh, get involved. So before you judge something from the outside looking in, um, attend an AI series. Come through and try, just because, come and talk, get involved in something before you. I mean, it's always easy to look from the outside in and be critical. That's the human nature. That's what we do, right? We're always smarter than somebody else. And I think that from my point of view, I encourage people to get involved in it. And if you still have questions or are concerned about directions that we're going in, then we can talk. Then we can talk intelligently. But it's hard for me to tell somebody until they've actually experienced it, right? So for me, it's about more get yourself involved in it and see for yourself what's actually happening, and then we'll talk about where we're going with this.
Absolutely, and I think it's that statement around, you can't judge a book by its cover, right?
Yeah.
You're seeing a tremendous push in technology, cybersecurity being one of it, but there are other areas as well. For example, just so that our audience is aware, Ajax has been doing a lot of work in the healthcare, the digitization of healthcare. Very shortly, we're actually doing something on computer visioning, facial recognition, and agriculture with Korechi Innovations, and we're going to be
Mhm.
doing a session on that. There are numerous assets and facets in technology, but you have to draw a line and you have to start somewhere. And I think the decision to start from let's strengthen our cybersecurity posture means that you can now create a digital ecosystem and a digital environment for business. But that said, I do echo your sentiment, is that if anybody has questions about, how are we picking the topics and what are the series, etc., and how you can get involved, the one thing I'll tell you about Marilyn, and this is something that my team has learned a lot from here, is that ability to have your customer service switch always turned on. You can tweet at us, you can message us on Instagram. You be cordial, and you'll get 10 times more cordiality, if that's even a word, in return, and willingness to meet, whether that's through a social distancing mechanism or through Zoom, to have those conversations. Let's move a little bit further into another question that I don't think I can read it verbatim, but I will again sort of throw in my own little googly into it and see how we can sort of navigate the question. And that is the aspect of how has it been for you in terms of your own cybersecurity practices? Are you now, for example, if you're logging into something, do you find yourself going, I wonder if they're using multi-factor authentication? Or has it got you to think not just twice, but thrice and a couple of more times, to the point where you have that analysis paralysis moment?
Okay, so you're gonna think this is really dumb, but I no longer store my passwords on my notes section in my phone.
I don't think it's dumb. I think Bill Harmer, your fellow colleague on the advisory, will be clapping and cheering you on. So, anyways, go on.
And I know one other thing that I do that I never used to do was when I was searching on Safari, I now put it on private mode because
Interesting.
now, because I didn't know, and I found this out through the seniors AI, is that when you Google or search things on the internet not on private, it somehow it attaches it to Facebook, and then everything that you Google on there shows up on Facebook. Or, and you know what's really weird? Not even joking. So my husband and I are having a conversation about, I'm not even going to tell you what it was, but we were having a conversation about something. We weren't even looking it up, and we have Alexis
Right.
in our house.
Okay.
Alexa in our house,
Alexa.
and
Okay.
all of a sudden I start getting emails for the product that we were talking about, and I'm like, what is this? And suddenly we're like, holy cow, that thing happened this way. And now I'm starting to connect dots, and I'm like, so it's we never had this thing before. We got it for Christmas. It came with our iRing thing. And now I just want to shut the thing off because I was so offended that it was listening to what we were saying. And I'm like, how do I get that thing off? But anyway, um, I guess for me, I'm a lot more careful about doing those doing things on my even maybe this isn't, I mean, tell me if I'm not hitting what you want me to
No.
talk about, but even on Facebook, I'm much more careful about, playing those silly games like what are you going to be, who are you going to be married to in 35 years? Well, I'll be dead, but anyway, those kinds of things. Those silly games that people play. I used to play them all the time. I didn't know. And I realize now that that's just collecting information. That's just collecting data that perhaps I don't want to be collected on me, right?
I think there's that statement, think before you click, and I think you've adopted that to some degree. But at the same time, what I like about the conversation that we're having is that and this is just from personal experience, is earlier on when you started getting into the space of cybersecurity and thinking about it, you did become to that point where you're exercising extra caution, and you would ask quite a few questions. Hey, okay, should I do this or should I not? But I think you quickly realize that what, if we eat too many cookies, we'll get sick, but we'll get even more sicker if we don't eat any cookies at all, because we do need some fun in our lives and some enjoyment. So I think you went along with the journey a little bit, but you also realize you need to think before you click. Now we'll go into one little more question, and then we'll wrap it up and have some concluding remarks. Marilyn, you've been a fascinating journey with us. We've traveled through your beginning roots in education, etc., and then your willingness to go and to learn new things. I say this all the time, is that the more and more the world tells you or praises you for what you know, the more you tell yourself about what you do not know. And you've sort of personified that in many ways. Is there a book or a movie or a piece of art that you would recommend to people to say, hey, if you want to really get into my zone, this is something you should digest? It can be
Well,
a Bollywood film, that's fine. Fine, it can be a form of cuisine.
I'm going to
Actually,
say,
no, because no, looking at your healthy habits, your cuisine is going to be pretty boring. So
yeah,
scratch that.
nobody wants to eat what I eat.
Yeah, no,
Nobody.
no, I don't. I'm good with buttered chicken. Let's go. Let's go.
um, I'm an old-fashioned book reader. So I know you can download books on your phone, but I like paper. I like turning pages. I like all that stuff. So in the summertime is usually the only time that I can actually read what I like to read. And I'm immersed in fiction.
Right.
And I love I'm right into it. Like I love CSI, I love Law and Order. I can watch them over and over and over again. All the Law and Orders, I love all of them. But right now, I'm reading David Baldacci. Is that his
Okay.
name? Yeah. And it's Minute to Midnight. And it's a whole mystery. And I love mysteries. He's a very, very good author. I like his writing. I also like Lee Child. Oh,
Yeah.
love that guy. I've read every single book of his. Loved it. I would not have picked. Who's the guy that played the Lee Child character? Jack Reacher.
Okay.
Tom Cruise was not who I would have picked to do Jack Reacher. Not a chance. He's too short. Runs funny. No way. No way. He should have been a bigger guy. But anyway, so deep into my psyche, I'm pretty surface. I like books that I don't have to, I love mysteries, and that's kind of where my head goes in there. I don't know.
You're that moment.
I wish it was more interesting, but it's really not.
You're that moment in The Simpsons where Homer's given something guaranteed and said, "You can get this, and there's $1,000 in it, or you can get what's in the box." And he goes, the box," because you want that mystery. Anyways, on that light note, I'm going to go back to our audience and summarize our conclusion to our conversation today. For one, I hope all of you got to realize is that part of the power hours is to, for lack of a better word, humanize some of our folks who are sitting in seats of power. Whether you're a CISO, a CIO, a senior information security expert in whatever industry you're in. My colleague Farooq Nair, he always says, at the end of the day, we're human too. Just like, you want us to engage the vendor as being another fellow human. We're human too. We have moments. We are tired at certain times. We have lapses. We have lives where we want to be creative, where we want to express ourselves in different ways. And part of this power hour is really to speak truth to that power and shatter all of these fallacies and these fantasies that we think of, which come with certain high titles and high positions. They're human at the end of the day. And I'm hoping that this conversation today got you to connect with the human side of politicians and politics as well. If there's one thing that I can say about this conversation, and I'll summarize it as follows, is, if there's a book that you're waiting to read and it hasn't been written yet, you need to write it. And that's exactly what Marilyn's done. There were things around cybersecurity that nobody was writing about, nobody was talking about in her community. And what did she do? She decided to write about it through words, through conferences, through exchanges, whatever else have you. I said this yesterday. Every revolution or every big idea begins with a thought and that step. Take that thought, take that step, and this is what happens. Within a year and a half, you have not only the world's first, or at least North America's first cybersecurity escape room, the rollout of a very impressive Dungeons and Dragons game in cybersecurity, and more importantly, the establishment of conversations and topics to keep young children safe online.
And I think CISO was the first time in Canada, wasn't it?
Yes, CISO, Global CISO Forum was the first time in Canada that was held in Niagara Falls.
That's
and I think it's so important, and to bring the Global Cyber Olympics and everything else have you, I think it's so important to realize how far a thought can take you. Marilyn, before I thank you, I want to remind our audience that next week, August 10th to 14th, we start off with healthcare. We will have 1 week of live content streaming to you from the Town of Ajax, a beautiful cyber studio brought to you by the Town of Ajax in collaboration with CyberX. On behalf of the college, on behalf of the Town of Ajax, I want to thank CyberX for pouring in the resources to bring that kind of a facility and show us what's possible in the new normal. All of you can register at www.cyberexchange.ca, earn up to 30 CPE credits, and get to engage not just through virtual engagements, but through community lounges and through the walls and through all of the community pages set up on the Cyber Exchange platform. Tomorrow, my guest is another mentor of mine, somebody that I've looked up to tremendously in the world of privacy, risk, and security. I'm going to be joined by Kat Kood, also known as Binary Tattoo, and we're going to go into the world and the intersections of art and security, judging by her name, Binary Tattoo, and then go into peeling out the layers around the art of privacy and the art of risk and the art of risk management. I couldn't think of a better artist than Kat Kood, and I look forward to seeing her tomorrow. Marilyn, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being awesome. You've always been someone who has, reached out to us for anything that you can do, and I really appreciate you always stepping forward to help and always stepping forward to engage and connect with the community. To our audience, once again, as Marilyn kind of hinted to, is stay true to yourself, stay safe, stay healthy, and in the words of Ali G, keep it real. Thank you very much. Marilyn, I'll see you in the green room if you can just stay here. And to our audience, enjoy the next, I believe they're showing a whole bunch of other streams on the Cyber Exchange platform. I invite you to enjoy that, and I'll see you tomorrow at 12 p.m. EST. Thank you very much, and over to you, team at CyberX.